Wow, another fabulous musical exposition here with Christina and Fredo and Dean and Garen and Kevin and Dan, of course. Thank you all for providing such beautiful music every week. And wow, this is my 5th Sunday being here. It seems impossible that it's gone so quickly. But one thing that's helped it, one thing that's contributed to that is just the joy I experience every Sunday being here and being able to be in worship with all of you and to hear this lovely music, which is so varied and so beautiful. And as you've seen with Jerry's announcement, there's transition afoot. Not that there hasn't always been. I just want to acknowledge that there's a transition in that my time here is coming to a close. Yeah. It is... That's the plan. Who knows what God has in mind for us. But I would like to acknowledge that because I think when we acknowledge transition and change, and even when it's a sense of loss and it's painful, it allows us to go through it in a really profound way. So I just want to acknowledge that this is kind of the beginning of the end of my time here. Still here, still have lots to offer. I don't want you to think that... Let's remember that we're still in this together. And we have so much to look forward to as we move into the next phase of this process with Reverend Denise. So, Reverend Denise, if you're watching today, I hope that you feel welcome here in this church. We got some shakas here and some applause. Good. So, if you were here the last couple of weeks, you're familiar with this metaphorical journey that I'm inviting us on. Recognizing that we all won't literally be on this journey together, but offering this as a metaphorical framework for how we might move through transition or change or transformation together. And isn't it beautiful that today's daily word that Cindy read for us is transformation? And it's no accident that's the word today, just like it was no accident that last week it was healing. And we spoke of healing as we enter this journey of transformation by letting go of fear and choosing trust. And I told you a little bit about my story, my life, of something that happened to me that led me to let go of fear and choose trust. This trust in the unconditional confidence that everything's okay, which brings me down here to rest in this bottom space, the depth of this journey of letting be. And in my life, the story that I started telling you, this happened over a winter, not last winter, but the winter before, where I really found myself leaning on the teachings and practices of Buddhism that I had learned and grown with over years and years of practice and learning. And what I came again and again to the realization of is how important compassion was. Compassion for myself in this experience, as well as compassion for the other people in my lives, even the people who were part of a very painful experience that I had, that I could have blamed them for, I could have projected on them. Instead, I held that with compassion and recognized that what happened wasn't about me. It was about what needed to be born, what needed to come through that community, and I just invited it unknowingly. So I invite us today into a little more of an exploration of this place of compassion, of letting be. And I'd like to start by exploring that word compassion, because it has many meanings to many people, and I'd love to hear some of them right now. What do you think of when you hear the word compassion? Just shout it out, and I'll repeat the ones that I hear. Caring, empathy, no judgment, forgiveness, love, kindness, trust. Yeah, lots of these beautiful qualities I think we could all associate with compassion. And one thing I like to do now is, because if you know me, you know how much I love language and precision in language. I'd like to be very precise and explore the word compassion through some of the meanings it has in terms of like what you might look up in the dictionary. Because this is an exploration that I made when I started to be curious about this word compassion and wanting to know what does the dictionary say, because to me that's a good starting point. I love to know the source of words, like their etymology. That's just a big word for saying where did they come from in human language. And compassion comes to us from compassus, which is Latin. It literally means to suffer together. to suffer together. And when I first learned that, I was confused and perplexed because I thought, what does suffering have to do with compassion? Compassion is about kindness and empathy and trust and all those beautiful things. And I said, well, I want to explore this for myself because I wasn't content to just have that explanation. So I also thought back to a teaching I had received when I was a student at Naropa University in the Master of Divinity program in this wonderful class called The First Turning of the Wheel, which is sort of an introduction to Buddhist teachings by Acharya Judith Zimmerbrand, a great teacher and great friend. And one thing I remembered her telling us or teaching us was many of these words in Sanskrit and what they meant and how they're translated into English. And one of the words I was most taken with is the word for suffering from Sanskrit. Anybody know what that is? Anybody heard that? Dukkha. Heard somebody say it over here, maybe Ralph, who heard it the last service. But that's good, Ralph, you're learning. So dukkha, D-U-K-K-H-A. And the interesting thing about Judith is that she was very precise about language too, and she taught us the literal translations of these words as well as like sort of the common translation. So the common translation of dukkha in English would be suffering. The literal translation is a little different. And I want to paint a little picture for you of the times of India about 2,500 years ago, where if you wanted to travel from one place to another, you had your feet, which might be bare, or you might have a cart to ride in, and this cart would likely have wheels made out of wood. And if you can imagine riding on a cart with wooden wheels, it probably has something in between it, like an axle, or an axle rod, if you like. So Miss Penn represents that. And I realized I would love to have an assistant for this next part. Is somebody willing to jump up here and assist me, not knowing at all what I'm going to ask you to do? Come on up. So let's start off there. So what we have here, and hold it up high so people can see it. Does this look like a wheel that we could imagine as a wooden cartwheel that has an axle coming through the hole in the center? See how the hole is centered? So go ahead and spin it and let's see what happens. Does that look like a fairly smooth ride? Yeah, I mean, it's a paper plate that I punched a hole in with a pen in like 5 seconds, so it's not exact. But maybe it wouldn't be exact in those times either. But let's look at something else. So let's take the pen out. I put it in the other hole. And now do the same thing, spin it. Let's see, does this look any different? Pretty different, huh? So coming back to Sanskrit, there's a point here. I'm not just playing with paper plates. Thank you, dear. So coming back to Sanskrit, the hole in the center is known as a good hole, or a good axle hole, a good hole for the axle to come through. And it creates what kind of a motion? Smooth, right? The other one, as you saw, is known as a bad hole, or a bad axle hole, a bad hole for an axle to come through. What kind of ride would that produce? A bumpy ride, exactly. So it's really interesting how the literal translation in the literal language is so evoking of the actual experience of something, in this case a paper plate, but I'm sure you can all imagine riding on that second cart, bumping your way down, which is probably already a bumpy road in rural India. So when I started thinking about this literal definition of dukkha, and therefore suffering, it made more sense to me when I thought about compassion as suffering with. Because I realized, what if I saw compassion as my capacity to sit down in that cart next to you, your cart, your bumpy ride, and off we go, bumping down the road of life, and I'm there with you. Is that compassion? Is that suffering with you in the way we defined it? Yeah. What if I'm in my own cart by myself? Can I also be with myself in that suffering in this bumpy ride? Can I be with myself? Yeah. So that's how we can cultivate compassion for ourselves and for others. And what I'd like to invite now is to come back to this image, this metaphorical journey of healing down into this depth. So we're going to take our cart, however bumpy the ride is, and we're going to head off towards the sea. Maybe there's a donkey pulling it. Maybe our brother's pulling it. We take turns pulling the cart. But eventually we're going to arrive at the side of the sea. And we're going to get out of the cart, and we're going to jump in the water. Because what I'd like to invite you now is to join me in a little bit of a meditation. I invite you to close your eyes or lower your gaze, however you're comfortable. And imagine that you're floating there. You've entered the sea. You're floating. The waves are gently moving you. This is probably easy to visualize and to feel because you live in Hawaii. And I bet if you're like me, you were in the sea already today. Can you feel it? Can you feel that gentle motion? Like being rocked in the arms of a mother? Being held so gently that you don't even notice that you're being held? Maybe in your imagination, you're under the water. That's okay. It's your imagination. You can breathe there. Do you feel the current subtly moving you back and forth? Do you feel the great peace that you could experience when you just let yourself be? Fully surrender to the water. Fully surrender to your experience and let the world speak for itself. Can you imagine this? Can you imagine that you take this in, you allow it to fully be part of your experience and your being? That you could notice that you're not alone in this space. Also with you are all the people you know. You don't have to do this by yourself. We could be with each other as people, as individuals, and yes, as a community. Can you feel it? Can you reach out and join hands with the person next to you in this ocean, literally or metaphorically? Can you open your eyes and look around and see who's here with you? It may not look like the ocean right now. It may look like the sanctuary, but we've been on this little journey together. And I invite you to remember that this is a resting point in preparation for something. We're not here forever. We're here in preparation for what comes next. If you remember Easter Sunday, what next? We're going to rise up, right? And this is something else we can do together. We rest in this cradle of compassion, in our mother's arms, rocked and held so sweetly, so gently, to help us find the strength and the inspiration to find what comes next. Because we don't know yet. This is the exciting point where we're letting be, and we don't know what's going to come next. And when I think about our work together here at Unity Church of Hawaii, I'm excited because I don't know what's going to come next. I have a little idea of what I would like to offer and what I would like to shepherd, and none of us really knows what will come next. But I'm confident that if we've done our work in letting go of trust, letting go of fear and choosing trust and resting in the depths of compassion, and now we let what wants to be born burst forth, that we will be available to the yet unknown possibilities that will transform this community and this body of people. Thank you.